What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 11 of the A&M podcast. I'm your host, Andre, and he's Left Indy, the co host. And we're coming to you live. Well, not live, but technically, we're coming to you from the ATP network. You can catch us on all platforms: YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, and Twitter. And some shameless plugs. Follow the official ATP Network Twitter account. I handle right there. And like the video and subscribe. So yeah, man. So Mike, this has been a interesting week, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and it's only just gotten started too.
Yeah, yeah. It's been
Freaking
crazy, man.
Pope is dead. Day after
Yeah,
Easter, held out just
yeah,
long enough to deliver one final sermon.
yeah, yeah. That was. Yeah, when he passed away, man, then I heard that JD Vance, he saw JD Vance. I'm like, yeah, like my conspiratorial brain kicked in, like
Well,
he's a
I mean,
suspect.
I'm pretty sure he was disturbed by the longing gazes that Vance was directing toward his chair. Um, it's like, dude, what are you staring at? Oh no, that's lovely upholstery there.
Oh goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
Vance is looking at the empty chair next to Francis, like, his eyes bugging out, like it's like, okay, this guy's creeping me out. Can we end this meeting like now?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh goodness gracious, man. That's something else. You meet a creep JD Vance, like one of the last people you meet. I guess officials you meet before you pass on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I'm sure Pope Francis thought he had a few more days in him at least, but yeah, Vance was basically going there to try and either suck up to him or try to bully him into dropping his opposition to Israel's genocide of the Palestinians, because his Easter Day message was to uh, reiterate his call for a ceasefire in Palestine, an end to the carnage. So I'm
yeah,
sure Vance was there to lecture him or something.
yeah. Thinking about it, yeah, that kind of do make sense.
Yeah, but yeah, Francis unfortunately refused to mask because COVID never ended, and I'm sure he's had at least two or three COVID bouts already. But given his advanced age and that COVID does deplete the immune system, but he had bronchitis, pneumonia in both lungs. Uh, I'm sure it was too much for his heart to handle, and reports are coming in that he had a stroke and a heart attack at the same time. Uh, but yeah, COVID's no joke, and when you get it, your immune system is shot, and that's why we're getting all these other respiratory viruses that we thought we had beat. They're coming back, and because you've got charge of government now, people just refuse to get vaccinated, and so there's predictable results.
Yeah, yeah, like in West Texas, the measles outbreak. Now it's spread it to other parts of the country as well, including my state, Louisiana. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, man. And the craziest thing about the same people that spreading this misinformation out are the ones that are getting vaccinated. You notice that, right?
yeah.
The same. It's, yeah, like, like sometimes you think they're trying to do a depopulation type shit.
Well, I think part of it is, the system benefits from having a population that is too sick and brain damaged to organize on its own behalf. So yeah, they're going to trash talk vaccines and downplay viruses that they know uh, make people too sick and brain damaged to fight back.
Yeah,
And now they're moving to gut the Department of Education at the same time that they're preparing to start collecting on student loan debt.
yeah, which a lot of people don't have.
Right.
Um, I mean,
Because we can't
especially,
get
yeah,
jobs.
yeah,
It's like they're
yeah,
doing nothing to create jobs, but they expect us to pay off our student loan debt. With what money?
yeah. What money?
It's like you told us if we wanted to make more than minimum wage that we had to go to college and get degrees,
That's what I've been
go to
told.
trade school and get degrees. So we went to college and trade school and couldn't get any financial aid. So we had to take
Yeah,
out loans in order to get these degrees that you told us were necessary to make more than what was at the time 4.25 an hour. Then it got raised to 7.25 an hour.
yeah, yeah.
And then when we got
Exactly.
out of school, the jobs that were promised didn't materialize. So we're stuck
I
with all
know.
this debt that Joe Biden made sure we can't discharge through bankruptcy.
Yeah,
Oh, but
I
Donald
remember
Trump can
that.
declare bankruptcy.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, huh? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I went to college. And the job, the field I have, most likely will most likely be replaced by AI. So really, most of these college degrees will be just paperbacks. I
Yeah.
mean, at this point,
Yeah. So at this
um,
point, I'm looking for work outside the country because
yeah,
it's not happening here in the United States.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes I'm thinking like I need to leave, man. Like maybe somebody will my field, maybe somebody I'll be useful in another country somewhere. Like I don't
The problem is we can't afford to leave because it costs money to
exact
move.
a lot of money. Yeah, yeah, costs a lot of money to move, and then you got to get used to the culture there and all that stuff. So it's tough. It's like most of American people right now is in a tight bind, um, and it
Yeah,
feel like no end in sight.
yeah, and one of my pastimes is watching travel videos on YouTube, and it's like, how do these guys who travel on like luxury yachts and sleeper trains and all these first class flights, every couple of weeks, how do they afford all this? They're either
I know.
loaded and not telling anyone, or they're taking advantage of like sponsorships or free stuff from these places for publicity.
Yeah, yeah. I know one of those people that travel, Noel Phillips. He's British. You watch his videos.
I don't think so. I know there's Trek Trendy. He's this young British guy, but again, no masking on the flights or trains or anything.
Yeah,
So COVID is
yeah,
still decimating people.
yeah, yeah,
The Western society is cooked. I swear. Even in China, people are out there getting COVID because they dropped all medications. I mean, they're dealing with it as best they can with repurposed HIV drugs, but that's not going to stop all the uh, initial damage that gets done with the infection.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
Because by the time it shows up on a test, the damage is already done.
yeah. And Mike, don't you believe that? Like, since we know that COVID damages the brain, I think that most of Americans are pretty much cooked. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can tell the way people function. Like,
yeah, and and of course the White House website just reformatted COVID.gov to spread disinformation, claiming it came from a laboratory, claiming masks don't work, downplaying. You're not going to find any info on vaccines, obviously. It's like
right?
you expect people to believe that COVID is a bioweapon that we should do absolutely nothing whatsoever to mitigate or to avoid getting. I mean, obviously, they assume people are stupid.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
And
like
because
yeah,
people are getting brain damage left and right from repeat infections, they're probably not wrong to think that.
yeah,
But that's the thing about lying and why I react so strongly to being lied to, because it's an insult to the intelligence. It's assuming that I'm too stupid to understand that I'm being lied to.
yeah.
So that it's a
Then
blatant act of hostility, and I just answer it with hostility right back. I don't have any patience for aggression, whether it's passive or direct. I just respond with
exactly.
aggression because that's what it is.
Yeah. These days you have to respond with regression because even some of our allies believe this shit, and I'm like, you supposed to be a communist and you believe that COVID was made in a bio
Yeah,
lab and
they're not communists.
vaccines. I know they cosplaying.
Yeah,
Most of these people on Twitter just cosplaying. They're not real communists. Like they don't they just
yeah, no
take
solidarity whatsoever. I mean, even if you don't believe in COVID, you should at least be wearing a mask like that covers both your eyes and your entire face, so that facial recognition technology can't be used to identify you and get you blacklisted from employment or throw you in prison and sent off to a death camp in El Salvador. Everyone should be
exactly.
masking right now
Exactly.
and wearing
Yeah.
sunglasses or whatever, or something that can't be easily removed by the pigs.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, Luigi Mangione would be a free man if he had completely hidden his eyes because he had
Yeah.
the
I noticed that.
respirator on.
Yeah. 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 It's like it's like these days, man. It's like it's like you screaming into a void, like telling people like, "Hey, um, COVID still killing people. It's still jumping on people." And it's like they're they brain dead from COVID, or they just don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I think
Probably
it's
both.
both. Yeah,
Uh, my
but yeah,
goodness.
so but yeah, I caught your part of your broadcast earlier with regards to Pope Francis passing away, but I wanted to offer a little bit of history here because a lot of this goes back to when he was first appointed. So let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. Here we are. All right. So Pope Benedict the 16th, otherwise known as Joseph Ratzinger, uh, he ascended to the papacy after Pope John Paul II passed away. So he was Ratzinger was basically the guy in charge of covering up the kiddie molestation stuff for the Catholic Church, as well as funneling money into his own coffers. So this is from December 31st, 2022, because I think that's when I do believe that Ratzinger passed away at 95 in December of 2022. So he'll basically be remembered mostly as the Pope who resigned, first Pope to resign in 600 years. So, but he was also embroiled in a lot of embezzlement scandals, and that's on top of the other stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it says uh, Benedict the 16th had a long and illustrious career as one of the Roman Catholic Church's preeminent theologians. Well, I wouldn't say that, considering his membership in Opus Dei, which is a very fascistic subsect within the Roman Catholic Church. Opus Dei is the sect of the Catholic Church that supported Hitler and the Nazis. And guess what Benedict the 16th did? Yeah, he was in, yeah, he was a former Hitler Youth. So, but
Oh shit.
yeah. So the former German Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger was the Vatican's doctrinal watchdog before becoming Pope. Then, after being elected pontiff in 2005, in the wake of John Paul II's demise, he continued the conservative course charted by his predecessor, using intellectually rigorous sermons that decried how the world seemed to think it could do without God. But so yeah, he was basically the guy who enforced the very arch conservative doctrine of the Catholic Church. So he did try to make outreach to Israel as a hallmark of his papacy, but he also rehabilitated a Holocaust-denying bishop, a scandal that he admitted he could have been avoided if someone at the Vatican had done a simple internet search of the bishop's name. Yeah, you mean like you, Josie? Like, come on,
Yeah.
you think this guy who himself was in Nazi Germany and collaborated, you think he would have known? Okay, yeah, he absolutely knew. I'm
Yeah, you
convinced.
do. Oh
But
yeah.
he resigned on February 11th, 2013, which is a Vatican holiday, to announce that he was resigning. So, but he had been embroiled in something of an embezzlement scandal. And Matthew Fox, who was a former Roman Catholic priest who was defrocked by Ratzinger, and then became an ardent critic of the Roman Catholic Church, and in particular Opus Dei, wrote that Ratzinger's secret crusade imperiled the church, and wrote on how it might be saved. But he wrote a book called The Pope's War, which, according to here, it says offers a provocative look at 3 decades of corruption within the Catholic Church, focusing on Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, and how the devastation of the past 2 papacies have wrought can be a blessing in disguise to reinvent Christianity for a 3rd millennium, yada yada. But yeah, so I would highly recommend reading this. But Fox has been an ardent critic of Opus Dei and its spiritual leaders within the Catholic Church. John Paul II was a member of Opus Dei. He was a Polish cardinal during the Soviet Union, and it was instrumental in helping bring about Poland's breakaway from the USSR in 1989. But then after Ratzinger stepped down, Argentina's George Bergoglio was elected as Pope Francis II. And this has a very interesting aspect, because what you choose as your name once you're elected pontiff says a lot about how you intend to govern, because Saint Francis, because there are 2 popes who named themselves after this figure, but Saint Francis was a leading member of the early church who dedicated his life to aiding the poor and the downtrodden and standing up for marginalized peoples. So the decision to take the name of Pope Francis once he was elected spoke to what he would do to shape the Catholic Church during his tenure. So George Mario Bergoglio of Argentina was elected as a surprise choice. Yeah, I would say it's a surprise considering.
Yeah.
But see, you have to understand, nobody at the College of Cardinals really expected a 76-year-old man to last long on the papal throne.
Yeah.
They figured he would be a placeholder until they get a more reliable member of Opus Dei to replace him. But he stuck around for 12 years, and over a lot of that time was spent reorganizing the church finances, basically so that the popes like Ratzinger could no longer use it as a personal piggy bank. So that's one of the reforms. He's also kind of stepped back away from the intolerance towards LGBTQIA people. He's been very critical, obviously, of the genocide in Gaza perpetrated by Israel. He was calling on Ukraine to basically stop the fighting and spare people's lives, because even he knew that the war was lost. And so he took a lot of flack from the Zionist regime in Tel Aviv and also the Nazi regime in Kiev. So yeah, he's been very maligned by the extreme right, who basically called him a commie pope, which is bullshit. I mean, at best he's a liberal. Yeah. But even Matthew Fox, who had criticized Bergoglio for not doing enough to protect targeted priests and other religious figures in Argentina during the dictatorship there, ended up being pleasantly surprised by Pope Francis's reform efforts. So, Matthew Fox wrote this in December 8th of 2013, not long after Francis was elected. And it says, following article was written by Matthew Fox for Tikkun magazine and published there in December of 2013. And so he says, I recently wrote a book on Pope Francis, or better, a book to him entitled Letters to Pope Francis. A book was released in Italian on Thanksgiving Day. In it, I challenged him to live up to his purposefully chosen namesake and warned that people would hold his feet to the fire because no other pope had ever taken up that name, icon that it is, and that most people do know what St. Francis of Assisi stood for: ecology and non-chauvinistic relationships to the plant and animal worlds, a preferential option for the poor, and, this may be slightly less acknowledged, an admirable and almost startling balance of gender justice and consciousness. In the celebrated poem Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, he moves back and forth between masculine and feminine names for the sacred. But basically, Francis really ended up being a force for reform within the church. Now, there are still some issues that he had, particularly with pursuing justice toward the victims of childhood sexual abuse by Catholic priests. That's something I think that he got more pushback on than he probably let on. But he also kind of set an example, because whereas with Ratzinger, if you look at the photos of Ratzinger and all the trappings that he had, like all the huge pointy hat, the colorful vestments that he had on him, whereas with Pope Francis, if you look at aside from this when he was sworn in, but that was basically his standing uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Much like a very simple uniform. Took very simple meals, never ate more than his basic diet required him to. Very frugal living. Apparently, the papal apartments, which the bishops of Rome reside in the Vatican, he cleared that out of a lot of its excess trappings. So, this was a pope who was a genuine reformer, and it's actually quite interesting that two of his possible replacements, one is Matteo Zuppi from Italy, and the other is Antonio Tagle, I believe it's pronounced. He's in the Philippines. Both are considered more liberal. And another thing that gives me a glimmer of hope, not much, but a glimmer of hope, that one of these two men might actually be chosen to succeed him, is that Francis also has removed a lot of cardinal bishops from office, for various things related to corruption and their refusal to carry out papal edicts, which that can be a double-edged sword, because if you're a bad pope, refusal to carry them out would be a good thing, and you don't want to punish that. But if you're a good pope and you're refusing to carry out orders because you want to try and defy efforts to reform, so that you're no longer able to do whatever you want that hurt people,
right?
You got to lay down the law and say, look, you either do this or you're out. And he chose to take a lot of them out. So roughly about 80% of the College of Cardinals right now, and don't quote me on that figure, I remember reading that, but I can't verify. But the majority of the cardinals who are supposed to be selecting his replacement were installed by Pope Francis over the last 12 years. So while I don't hold out much hope that there won't be a swing back to the extreme right within the Catholic Church, I do have a little bit of hope, because of the dozen or so, or 10 or so possible candidates who are favored to be the next pope. Two of them are liberal. Another three, I think, are alleged moderates, and then the other five are extreme conservatives. Although, if your only claim to being a moderate is that you don't think LGBTQIA people should be criminalized, and that's it, you're not really a moderate. So I would say there's really only Zupia and Tagle who can be considered even remotely liberal as far as one can be within the Roman Catholic Church. And even Tagle has some issues with regards to women's rights and LGBTQIA rights. And that he's mouthed some platitudes, but what's its actual policy been?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, you never know. You might surprise us. But I think between the two of them, Zuppi and Tagle, I think Tagle would be more likely to be chosen if the Cardinals decide, we're going to go with someone who's going to continue Francis's reforms, because the church does still need a lot of reform. I mean, 12 years is not nearly enough to undo decades of corruption.
Yeah. But you have to give it to Pope Francis though. He basically took the mantle and said, "Hey, things got to change." Like, all this fucking corruption like going on all these years, like yeah, that's not unacceptable. You got to set a standard. Pope Francis basically set a standard. That's from what I hear. And
certainly, if not the best pope in my lifetime, because I've only had two in my lifetime, John Paul II and Ratzinger, but if he's not the best in my lifetime, then certainly the least worst.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
I agree with that.
Kind of like with Jimmy Carter. I mean, he wasn't the best president of my lifetime, but he was the least worst.
Least worst, yeah.
So, but with Francis, I have to say, I genuinely am sad to see him go, and I wish he had stopped caving into the COVIDiots and dropping mitigations, because, especially after Biden got into office and dropped all mitigations and mandated everyone go back to normal. And, it's like, there was this one scene that just goes to show you just how far gone Biden's brain was even then. But a few years ago, Biden met with Francis at the Vatican and referred to him as a famous African-American baseball player. Well, first of all, Pope Francis is not African-American, and he's not a baseball player.
Yeah.
But he was shaking Francis's hands while breathing COVID on him, and didn't even know who he was.
Oh, jeez.
Which should get, but no, Biden was completely sound of mind throughout the entire 4 years of his dictatorship, right up until July of 2024, and only then.
They knew, man.
Yeah, they knew. They fucking knew in 2018, for crying out loud.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah, I remember.
2018, 2019. I mean, when he's at events in 2019, and he loses track of what he's supposed to be saying, it's like, yeah, I knew these guys. I knew these men when they were kids. They were all guys at the time. It's like, well, yeah, they would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're men now, but they were all guys at the time. And I got hairy legs, and that the hairs used to be turned blonde in the sun, and the kids used to come into the pool and rub my leg down.
Oh, geez.
I love having children bouncing on my lap. Yeah, I'm sure you did, Biden.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah, and I remember he didn't know the preamble to the Constitution.
And it's like, and Obama visits the White House early into Biden's tenure, and all the staff are flocking to Obama, and Biden's just left to wander around, confused as to what he should do.
Yeah,
and that was in 2021. And you're telling me that this guy wasn't senile then, and that you didn't know? No, you fucking all knew.
Yeah, they knew.
No, Biden. Obama got Biden into the White House trying to stop Bernie Sanders because he wanted to preserve his legacy, and then he got Biden kicked out of the White House, maneuvering to get him removed as the nominee. And of course, Biden, for the few lucid moments he had, got his revenge. Though he picked Kamala Harris as his running mate.
Oh yeah,
knowing she was the absolute last person Obama wanted. I thought the last person who should stand to run for election if Biden became incapacitated and couldn't run for a second term, because he knew she would lose.
Yeah. I thought they were gonna pick Stacey Abrams, but you know what?
Yeah, and you know what? Watching that video of Stacey Abrams listen to Biden's pick and realizing that she had sold her soul for nothing.
Yeah.
Right on the air, watching all the joy drain out of her face when she realized
I
I
laughed so
sold out
hard,
for
man.
nothing.
I laughed so hard when I saw that. I'm like, "There's your ass get. There's your ass get. Hey, these motherfuckers
I
don't
mean,
like you."
yeah, I mean, Kamala Harris wasn't all mentally there herself. I mean,
Right.
this is someone who speaks in empty platitudes. Trying to avoid saying anything of substance that she just cannot form a coherent sentence. She's like uh, the worst aspects of Dan Quayle and Al Gore rolled into one,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
or it's Dan
That's true.
Quayle and Gerald Ford.
Oh my God.
Now,
Yes.
remember what Nixon said of it was either Gerald Ford or maybe Fred Thompson, maybe both. But he said of one of these two, this guy can't fart and chew bubblegum at the same time.
You can say the
So,
same back to him.
so I mean, you remember Fred Thompson? He was a rather infamous senator who also acted in television and a few movies, but he was rather infamous for these uh, folksy sounding, idiotic statements, trying to sound like he was like this wise yokel, but just basically ended up sounding like a complete moron who thought he knew it all.
Yeah.
So you take
Yeah.
that and then put Dan Quayle's brain into him, and that's Holocaust Kamala Harris, who only got to be Attorney General of California because nobody else wanted the job.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what really gets me like I should have known like the same person that couldn't win a delegate in her own state back in 2020 primaries was going to win the presidential
Yeah, she
election.
had to
Like
drop out because she knew she wouldn't get a single delegate. I
that's
mean,
sad.
hell,
Can you
when
get a
Tulsi
delegate?
fucking Gabbard, that horrendous sellout,
Yeah.
destroyed you in a debate so thoroughly. I mean, seriously, people in California were relieved when she
Yeah.
got picked to be VP because it meant she would no longer be in California to fuck up their state anymore. Just like people
Yeah.
here in Ohio were actually relieved when JD Vance got bumped up to VP because they knew that he would have virtually no power whatsoever here in Ohio. Okay, I mean it's still horrible here under that reptile Mike DeWine,
Oh God. Yeah.
who's been in the
Yeah.
Ohio Mafia for decades, by the way. Him and
Not
Runfish.
surprising. Mr. Drink water from East Palestine, Ohio. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So yeah. So Couchfucker Vance. Yeah. He and yeah, he and a bunch of others were caught on audio, basically saying that they thought Muskrat is annoying, weird, and should probably be tested for drugs on a daily basis.
Well, taking crematine. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they want him out, but Trump is like, uh, I think, slowly but surely starting to realize that there can't be two wrecking balls within the White House. There's only room for one, which
Yeah.
is why Muskrat has been relatively quiet lately.
Yeah. I noticed that.
But he's still doing a lot of damage. So don't count him out yet. But Steve Bannon, I think, is working behind the scenes to try and weasel his way back into Trump's good graces. I don't think it's going to work because Trump despises people who demonstrate disloyalty to him or whom he thinks are just using him for their own purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
But
he's starting to realize that with Muskrat. But personally, if someone's 4-year-old, and I think I said this last week, but if someone's 4-year-old told me that I wasn't the president and that I need to go, and I knew that he had gotten that from his father, who was right in the room with me, I'd have ordered the cameras turned off, had Secret Service take the kid out, and then the remaining Secret Service beat the shit out of Muskrat have him escorted out and deported to El Salvador after seizing all of his assets. Oh, and you know what? Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh
Mark
my God.
Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
who spent so much time since January sucking up to Trump, got
Yeah.
nothing
Oh
out
yeah.
of it because now Facebook is facing an antitrust lawsuit
Yeah. They could lose Instagram
saying,
on
look,
her
you've
too.
got to divest your company of Instagram and
Yeah.
WhatsApp and probably what's that other one that
Damn. What is it? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
it's on my Snapchat.
Snapchat. Oh,
Yeah.
they own Snapchat too? Oh,
Yeah.
damn. I didn't know that. Wow. I haven't used
Yeah. So
Snapchat since what,
WhatsApp,
2018?
Snapchat, and Instagram. So
Oh, wow.
basically, yeah, that's basically how Trump repays the people who uh, he says he thinks are just basically a bunch of weak ass suck ups, which they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Google couldn't wait to drop all of its pandering with Pride Day.
DI,
Right,
all
right.
that shit.
Yeah, all that stuff that it puts up on its
Yeah.
homepage when you see the
Yeah,
logo.
on Google
How
Calendar.
much, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then of course Disney is dropping all of its live action reboots because of the failure of the Snow White movie. Because they figure, okay, we'll cast a Hispanic Snow White and an Israeli war criminal evil queen, which, to be fair, is appropriate casting. But that just
Yeah.
means that you've got a movie that alienates both the right and the left.
Basically. Yeah. And who asked for Snow White?
Real brilliant move there, Disney. I mean, if you'd cast someone tolerable as the evil queen, like someone who could actually act, with
Yeah.
Renee
That was
Ziegler,
yeah.
it might not have tanked so badly, and you might have actually made some money with the movie. But no, you had to cast one of the worst actresses in Hollywood in modern times. I mean, there's this movie
Oh.
called Deadly Weapons, starring Chesty Morgan. It was in the 1970s. She was already like 40 or 50 years old at the time, but she was known primarily for puberty being extraordinarily kind to her, if you take my meaning, uh,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Polish. Can't act worth a damn, but they were trying to compete with Russ Meyer for exploitation movies, so they cast her in this movie called Deadly Weapons about a woman whose mob boss father, as it turns out later in the film, has her mafia low-level scumbucket boyfriend murdered, and she goes on this quest to find the murderers and gets her revenge by smothering them with her weapons that God gave to her. One of the more memorable castings was porn actor Harry Reams, who had a mustache that survived his death from AIDS, I think. But the mustache went on to star as Chewbacca in Star Wars a few years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh my
imagine
goodness. I can't see that.
imagine an Israeli war criminal who has that level of acting talent, which is to say none at all.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Hell
Yeah.
no.
It, oh goodness gracious, man.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Israeli war criminal who in Zack Snyder's expanded edition of Justice League, the 4 hour, twice as long dumpster fire
Yeah.
that was just as awful, only twice as long as the theatrical release. And you realize that Joss Whedon, as trash as he is, actually improved the movie.
Right.
And even then it was awful.
Oh my God.
So yeah, his idea of making a Wonder Woman that little girls can look up to was to have her literally crush a man's head in front of a bunch of school kids who have been taken hostage, and instead of having the kids react like one normally would after watching someone's head get splattered against a wall, like casually, by a flaming psychopath, the kid asks, "Can I grow up to be just like you?" And she says, "Honey, you can grow up to be whatever you want." Oh, okay, so yeah, I'm going to grow up to be a homicidal psychopath like you
Yeah, it crushed my head.
and
Yeah.
murder people in front of small children just like me.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good. That's a good
yeah,
adult
yeah. Do you
figure
think
for a
do
kid.
you think Bob Iger, maybe just maybe instead of casting her as an evil queen, you could have cast someone who isn't a raging fucking war criminal and
Could have found anybody else.
homicidal maniac. Because maybe
Yeah.
then Renee Ziegler, who obviously never saw the first Snow White movie,
Yeah.
calling it weird, weird. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it could have survived her, but you
Yeah.
get
She'd
her
be tolerable.
and Gal
Yeah.
Gadot
Yeah.
in the same movie, and yeah, that was so. Now Disney is abandoning its live action reboots for the time being until it can regroup and come up with something that they think will please the extreme right. Meanwhile, you got Zionist and genocidal maniac Neil Druckmann as The Last of Us season 2, and I have no intention of watching it because I hated The Last of Us Part 2 with a passion because it shat all over the first game's story.
Yeah.
But reviews, even from right wing extremists on YouTube, are saying, yeah, it's a mixed bag. Parts of it we like, parts of it we don't like, which is kind of expected because I watched season 1 on the high seas, and it was actually decent. Parts of it were improved upon from the video game, which you can consider the video game as sort of a storyboard for the live action
Yeah.
series. Although with only 8 episodes, I don't think that was quite enough for character development and growth. But I also understand that the budget that they had, that they only could allow for so much, because otherwise they're going to drag it out for like 15 hours or 20 hours, which will be like the actual play time of the video game, and you just can't have that.
You're
Not
right.
not with today's format, because if you're going to do a 20 or 24-hour season of episodes, then you've got to cut the budget for the special effects. So probably I think it could have gone at least maybe 16 episodes, 13 at minimum. But what they did, I think, was in many ways an improvement on the video game in translating it to the television format. But with the second game, it was just trash. It basically took everything that people liked about the first game and the growth of the characters and how they form a bond of father-daughter relationship. And a guy who already had lost one daughter learned to become a father again to someone whom he adopted, and let people in emotionally. But basically took that and flushed it all down the toilet with the second game, and now adapting it for the second season. And I was like, no, I'm not watching this. But it turns out Druckmann is a major league Zionist who decided to use the second game as a way to both sides the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah. 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 Of course. Right.
Because the
Yeah.
stand-ins for the Palestinians are depicted as religious fanatics who perform human sacrifices, whereas the stand-ins for the Israelis, that they're depicted as an over-militarized bunch of assholes.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the protagonist of the second game gets an undeserved redemption arc after brutally murdering a major character so violently that even her closest friends are like, "Yeah, we can't be around you anymore."
Yeah. A bit too extreme right there. Like, got
Yeah,
to
it's
back
like,
up a
dude,
little bit.
it's like, dude, when you take a bunch of sociopaths and like, nah,
Yeah.
we can't back this. You went over the line.
Yeah.
It's like we thought you were just going to do a quick, clean kill, and you beat him to death with a golf club.
Yeah. 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 A bit.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a bit extreme.
so yeah, but that's the state of Hollywood these days. but that's part of a trend where we're seeing now a slide to the extreme right within Hollywood, because obviously 10 years of phony pandering to liberals and alleged woke people. Although I've yet to meet anyone who's actually woke who actually likes any of this drivel. So maybe you got some fanfic writing dweebs who they're not even the good fanfic. I've actually read some very good fanfic in my time. All right, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against fan fiction. I mean, Star Trek Continues was one glorified fan fiction, written, directed, and starring Vic Mignogna, who's basically an asshole, although he got Me Too'd some years ago. It's kind of iffy. I'm 50-50 as to whether or not he actually did it, kind of like with Scott Ritter and the charges against him. But
Right.
but he at least approached his fan fiction continuation of Star Trek out of respect for the source material. Like, he actually understood it and remained faithful to the spirit of Star Trek, even if the details were a little inconsistent. But and then there was like some Highlander the series fan fiction I've read that actually did better than season 6 did, with continuing a story arc that carried over from the end of season 5. But so I have nothing against fan fiction. The problem
I
is
don't either.
the problem is when you get the people who never actually learned to write once they got out of 6th grade, who went to
Yeah.
film school, decided they were too cool to learn how to actually write a screenplay or even how to tell a story, and nevertheless managed to connive their way into the studio system, where they got put in charge of properties such as Star Trek, Doctor Who, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica,
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo, and decided, yeah, we're just going to do our shipping and our horrible schoolyard fanfic that never progressed beyond 6th grade, and we're going to make that the official canon. And if you don't like it, well, then you're a bigot.
Or
Because
they'll
they
cancel
can
you.
manage to make characters that are carbon copies of us but can't act, because the actors we cast can't act for shit.
Yeah.
And even the ones who can act are hindered by the poor writing. And it's like, okay, fine, yeah, you got your character who goes out of the way to say, yeah, my pronouns are they, but what the fuck does that actually accomplish? It's like, who cares?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly.
You already did episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think it was called The Outcast, where you have like this genderless species called the Janai, where nobody's supposed to have any gender, and if someone who's found who does have a gender is brainwashed and surgically altered to conform to the rest of society. And then the protagonist for that episode was actually gender female and fell for Commander Riker. And so
Right.
there's a whole bunch of issues. Like, it was basically intended to as a way to stand in for transgender issues,
Yeah. Yeah.
lesbian issues. So so that was an episode where uh, it was kind of picked up on by Seth MacFarlane when he created the Orville. I had this thing in the back of my head for a theory, is that, being a lifelong fan of Star Trek, because the Orville is also fan fiction. If you think about it, that's his love letter to Star Trek. He came out and admitted it. So he's basically taking stuff that was in like the TNG era and kind of improving on a lot of stuff. So with the Moclans, for example, they're a single-sex species, or they're supposed to be, although it's later revealed that this isn't really the case. But they too weed out any females that are discovered at birth, and then re-engineer them to be male. And that, they're very hostile toward anything feminine or female. So one of the characters is a Moclan, and he lays an egg, because that's how they reproduce asexually. But he lays an egg and it hatches and it's a baby girl, and then there's all this drama in later episodes as we explore how people react to it. And so the last season, which was season 3, they kind of resolved that in a way that kind of improved on the episode from TNG called The Outcast, and actually kind of redeemed the ending from that, in my opinion. So, but these are shows that actually are woke and in the most real sense, because you've got representation, but you're writing genuine characters whom people can invest emotionally in and sympathize with and relate to, as opposed to these kind of cartoon cutouts that are basically depicted as either villainous or comic relief, or just kind of shoving it down your throat. I mean, that's not representation, that's just tokenism, and that's what alienates both the left and the right, because the left understands, you're not really doing this genuinely.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Exactly.
didn't even give a lot of the so-called characters from STD, which is what people call Discovery, who criticize it. But STD, they didn't even get character names until halfway through season 2.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but we're supposed to feel sympathy for this random character that you just picked out and decided to kill off, and we're supposed to feel sympathy, but you gave no character build up.
Yeah. Totally, man.
Yeah.
One last topic. Luigi possibly faces the death penalty, man. Like, give me your thoughts.
They're trying to make an example out of him, and they don't even know for certain that he's guilty.
Exactly.
I don't know for certain that he's guilty. The images that we got prior to his capture suggest to me that might have been a different person, because you might be able to change your clothing, but how do you go from like thinner eyebrows to thicker eyebrows?
Yep, that's why I say it too.
And a differently shaped chin. I mean, granted, he was wearing a respirator in the one photo, but that's allegedly of the shooter. But a lot of that just doesn't add up, because why would you go back to the scene of the crime or use? It's like, because the cops found the backpack and presumably the stuff that he ditched, but why would anyone be stupid enough, unless he wants to be caught? But why would anyone be stupid enough to use the same burner phones and credit cards that you used to carry out the crime? No one's that dumb.
Yeah, you could track all this stuff. Yeah, exactly.
But they're trying to make an example out of this guy, and not having a very good time of it, because the more coverage he gets, the more people sympathize with him.
Yeah,
And the more they try to taint the jury pool.
Yeah.
And get a judge who's a de facto co-counsel for the prosecution, the more public sympathy he gets.
Yeah. Yeah. And you notice mainstream media don't cover it anymore, because the reception from the public is that whether he did it or not.
Yeah, and it should result in jury nullification, because they've prejudiced pretty much any and all potential juries against the defendant. Right. I mean, there should have been jury nullification in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, because he had a judge who was de facto co-counsel for the defense.
Yeah, exactly.
And the way they picked the jury was basically guaranteed to get an acquittal.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're hampering the prosecution by denying him the ability to do what he needs to do. So it's like, if you're putting your thumb on the scale before the trial is even properly held, and you're trying to convict him in a public court, you don't have a case.
Yeah.
But that's what they're trying to do on the opposite side from what they did with Rittenhouse. They're trying to do to Luigi Mangione, but get him convicted without a fair trial.
Yeah.
Because if they don't make an example out of this guy,
it's going to happen more.
Right. But even then, though, even if they make an example out of him, and they convict him and give him the death penalty, and he's executed, even if they do that, that still does not solve the problem, because the problem is that we are being squeezed past the breaking point by corporations and the heartless chief executive officers who make it a policy to be cruel, unnecessarily so, and to make life unbearable for most people.
Yeah.
So they're just creating more Luigi Mangiones. If he did do it, I don't know that he did, but if he did
Yeah.
do it, you're just making a martyr out of him and inspiring others to go ahead and uh, do what he did, but learn from his mistakes.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think like you said, Mike. I think they know that they really don't have a case against this guy,
Yeah,
whether
because
he
every
did it
time
or not.
the mainstream media talks about this guy, his sympathy goes up.
Yeah. Literally, like it's literally kind of hard to find any news and updates about this guy. Like
Yeah,
when I covered him,
that's a
yeah,
deliberate choice because once they realized, oh wait, no matter how we try to smear this guy, it just makes him look better before the public. So we have to do this more quietly.
yeah, yeah. And what's your thoughts on the Carmelo Anthony situation? I know that's kind of controversial.
I don't know enough about it. I really, the algorithms on Twitter are horrible, and I don't get half of what I should be.
Me either.
So if you can, if you know more about it, please explain it to me because I don't want to talk about something I'm not familiar with.
Okay, apparently, the Metcalf brothers, um, okay, the tent, it was raining. Carmelo Anthony was in his tent. The Metcalf brothers was basically manhandling him, picking on him, manhandling him, and apparently they said at first Carmelo had a knife, but turns out, according to eyewitness reports, we don't know how legitimate they are, but they said that he had a cleat sharpener. He was at a track meet. It was raining. You go in the tent.
Yeah.
Keep from the rain, and he, defended himself because apparently they was bullying the guy, and then
Well, if you're being violently assaulted by two guys, because I don't know if you realize this, but homeless people get brutally beaten or murdered by twits all the time, like upper class bozos who decide, yeah, we're going to
yeah,
go much like the Spartans and
yeah,
murder us a homeless person or a peasant
right,
if we can get away with it. So,
right,
I mean, what did they expect when they decided to do this? That he would just sit there and take it and let them beat him or murder him? No, obviously he's
exactly,
going to defend himself.
yeah. Yeah, and ever since then, man, right wing media lost their motherfucking mind. Like they smearing him, obviously, smearing his family. They raised money on Gibson Go because GoFundMe wouldn't accept the campaign, so they had to put it on
Okay, yeah,
Gibson
I
Go.
had heard something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in right wing media, even the New York Post should be fucking sued for defamation. Them the worst. Them the worst
Yeah, well,
motherfuckers right there
I'm
too.
frankly surprised that the New York Post is even still around because with all the defamation suits
Yeah,
that it could potentially have lost over the years,
yeah.
but it's owned and run by Rupert Murdoch's company,
Oh
so
yeah, yeah,
he's basically untouchable in this country.
yeah, yeah. And they
Fox
saying
Noise
that,
Channel should have been sued into oblivion for defamation decades ago.
yeah,
The only reason it
it,
wasn't is because again, you have to keep in mind that these are people with friends in very high places, not just among
right,
Republicans but Democrats as well.
right. That's true. That's true. And apparently, they said that they took the money. The Carmelo family took the money from Gibson Go and bought a house with it, which turns out they bought the house in 2022, and then they talked to some neighbors and said that they got a Cadillac Escalade. It's brand new because it had a paper tag, and apparently that Cadillac Escalade is apparently one of their representatives in the case. So yeah,
Okay, so
like all this,
basically, like a lawyer or something, or
yeah, kind of like
okay,
that.
so the
Yeah,
lawyer's car, not the families, and the house they bought 3 years ago.
yeah,
So basically, they're saying, oh yeah, they bought a house with the money. Okay, so they're lying, of course.
yeah, and then
I mean, I'm not surprised, but yeah,
yeah, and then
that's what they do.
yeah, and then one of the founders of Gibson Go had to come out. I'm glad they did. Said that they haven't even touched the money. It's $440,000, I think, probably more now. They haven't even touched the money. So So you lying, basically saying they touched the money to buy stuff, and they didn't even buy stuff with the money because it takes. I think Gibson Gold takes 5 days for the money to process or something like that. So
Yeah,
yeah, man, it's been a epic disaster with their family. And then of course, it's America, it's a racist ass country. They've been getting death
yeah,
threats.
yeah. If
So
it was
yeah,
Daniel Penny, that they would have been coming out of the woodwork to justify his actions. I got onto it with Brian Berletic some time ago because I was mentioning him and Scott Ritter and the clown shoes at the Duran and a few others who basically, I was basically making a point that I take these people seriously only to the extent that they deserve to be taken seriously. But then once I start in with the bigoted comments against LGBTQIA people, poor people,
yeah.
like oh God, I feel like such an asshole for forgetting his name. The guy Daniel Penny murdered,
Oh yeah, I forgot, I forgot to, man. Damn.
Jordan Neely.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jordan Neely. That's who he murdered. There's so many murder victims. It's hard to keep them all straight in my head because
Yeah.
it's like daily you read about some innocent black person being murdered.
Yeah.
But
Exactly. So
Berletic
yeah.
ended up blocking me after I called him out. And it's like, dude, I listened to you on Danny Haifong's show where you were parroting the far right talking points, smearing Jordan Neely as a dangerous thug and defending Daniel Penny. I can find the link to that if you want me to. And then he ended up blocking me. It's like, well,
Coward.
don't lie and don't be a bigoted asshole.
Yeah.
That's
Can't
one of
take
the
the
reasons
heat.
why
Stop
I
kissing.
distanced myself from Ritter because he couldn't leave people alone with regards to trans rights.
Oh yeah. 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 I've been to cut Scott Ritter. Yeah. I
Yeah,
stopped listening to him a long
and
time ago.
then my decision to unfollow him ended up being uh, really fortuitous because I discovered Sony Tang, who is Vietnamese and was handing him his ass with regards to the situation with Iran.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
So, but yeah, but really the only person I take it seriously from that crowd is Glenn Deason and Alexander Mercouris, and even Mercouris is problematic because he's good at regurgitating stuff that other people have written who actually have firsthand or direct secondhand knowledge of what's going on in Ukraine and Russia with regards to the war there. But he is so stunningly ignorant on everything from politics and politicians in Europe and the United States to COVID to the environmental apocalypse that we're undergoing. It's like so there's a really a bit of knowledge that each person has that is good, but I'm sure that there are better sources out there I haven't yet discovered. And the moment they
Yeah.
show themselves and they're consistent in knowing what they're talking about, and who don't go out of their way to be bigoted assholes, then I'll drop Mercurus
Right.
and go with
Yeah.
the other person. But right now Mercurus is not the best or even one of the best, but he's certainly better on a lot of this stuff than most of his contemporaries.
Right. Yeah.
Because
That's how
people
I
like
feel the
Douglas
same way.
McGregor are morons. They don't know shit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Them the ones that think they know everything. I'm
Yeah,
like,
these are the ones who are
dude.
praising Vance and Trump as some kind of political geniuses. It's like,
Yeah.
what?
That right
What?
there. Yeah. That's
That's how I know you're not even paying attention to American politics or politicians, because nobody thinks that Trump or Vance has half a brain between them.
oh my God. Yeah, I learned a long time ago you can't take these people
And of course,
seriously.
they waste no opportunity to suck up to Muskrat. It's like, dude,
Yeah, what's up with that? I know it's a lot of people sucking
yeah,
up to
well, it's a
Muskrat.
fashion because Muskrat has all this money and
Yeah, yeah,
he'll puff you up and get you the views
yeah,
by manipulating the algorithm, uh, but that's only if you remain on his good side, and they know what side of the bread their butter is on.
yeah, yeah. Once you cross him, he'll fuck you over in the algorithm. Trust me.
Yeah,
Yeah, trust me. Yeah. So So yeah, that was going on with the Carmelo situation, man. It's sad. Like, Daniel Penny and Kyle Rittenhouse didn't have to go through all this. No, it wasn't no smears from the left. I mean, not left, the liberal,
Extreme right.
liberal side smearing
Yeah,
them, but
yeah. I wouldn't even call them liberals. Democrats, yeah, but not
yeah,
liberals.
Democrat, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
even the Democrats didn't have a peep against these guys because they're every bit as law and order. Kill the black homeless people. I mean, the only reason they even jumped on board the George Floyd protests was because they knew it could get them elected.
yeah,
But 4 years
yeah,
of Biden throwing more money at cops
yeah,
so they could expand their cop cities and remove all restraints.
yeah,
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 they weren't going to repeat that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's wild out here, man. So any last words before we go?
Uh, yeah, just want to offer my condolences to the family, friends, and uh, members of the Roman Catholic faith who are mourning Pope Francis. Um, I'm not a Roman Catholic. My dad was. He was raised Roman Catholic. Then he converted to Eastern Orthodox and then Lutheran. And I was raised Lutheran, and then I went back to Orthodoxy, and then now I'm a Unitarian Christian. But
Yeah,
so that gives you a little bit of my religious evolution. But still, I respected Francis II for who he was and the reforms he instituted. So, I do offer my heartfelt condolences. By all accounts, he was a good man, much better, certainly by far than his two immediate predecessors.
yeah, way better. Yeah, yeah. Same here, man. Like, yeah, yeah. It's sad that the decent people in the world, it's very few decent people, have to die so early. But yeah, it's just the way it is, isn't it? um, so all right, Mike. You know, that wraps up episode 11 of the A&M podcast. This was a good episode.
Yeah,
I
thanks for
like
having
the.
me on, dude.
Oh yeah, no problem. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching the A&M podcast. You can catch us on all podcasting platforms, and we always on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter. So, all right, Mike. See you on the other side, man.
Good night and good luck.
All right, you too, man.